Good day, everyone, especially to you, sir. Today, I will be discussing the chapter 7, which is the production cost and industry structure. So, in this chapter, we're going to talk about the explicit and implicit cost and accounting economic profit, production in the short run, cost in the short run, production in the long run, and cost in the long run. All right, so let's get some definition out of the way. So, if you heard the word firm, what is it? Okay, so firm are companies, producer or business that gathers all the resources like your labor, land capital, and produce good and services. So that's called a firm. Next is the private enterprise. So it is a private companies owned by individuals. So private enterprise can be anything as a partly traded company. But the opposite of private enterprise would be something like a government controlled enterprise. And last is the production. So, production is the process of combining input to produce output, and that's called production. So, in this topic, you will hear the word output and input. So, when we say input, other sources company need, while the output is productions company produce. All right, so there are total four types of market structure. We have the perfect competition, monopoly, monopolistic competition, and oligopoly. So we're going to be spending a chapter for each of this concept in the next four chapters. So when we say perfect competition, you're gonna say you're gonna see many companies selling the same good, while monopoly company or a structure is the opposite side, where there's only one company starting a very unique good and there's no competition for that one company. So next is monopolistic company. Is we're somewhere in the middle. So you have many companies, but everybody sells similar but not identical good. And lastly is oligopoly. So is when you have a few companies, it sells similar or identical good, and it was make the only company special is because the market is so small. Dictated by a few company, the action of one company will have the impact on the well-being of other companies. So next is the profit. So what is profit? So the goal for each company is to maximize profit. Profit is your revenue minus cost. So revenue are the income generated by the companies from selling the goods, and then as a simpler form on your total revenue. So the total money collected by the company will be just equal to the price of each item times how many items. Um, the total money collected by the company will be just equal to the price of each item. So times how many items this company will sell. And also the difference between explicit cost and implicit cost. So when we say explicit cost are the costs that company are paying out of pocket, so directly wage, rent, utility, those will be explicit cost, while implicit cost are the opportunity cost that company has that's already in use in production. So there are two management for profit. First is the accounting profit. It is your total revenue minus explicit cost. And the second is economic profit. So it is your total revenue minus total cost, which include explicit and implicit cost. So all right. Next is let's talk about the production in the short run. But first, we need to know what's a production function. So, production function, including all the input company need to produce a good and services. So, this input are also commonly known as resources for company. So we have here the five categories. We have the natural resources or land and raw materials, labor, capital, technology, and entrepreneurship. So next is the production function. So the F here stands for function. So it's a function of natural resources, the labor, capital, technology, and entrepreneurship. So we're listing each of these input. Here at the end, we have our output. So production function shows you the input of the company versus the output for the company. All right, so some of the factors are fixed in the short run. So let's think about capital. So imagine for my business, how big my building is. So the size of my factory that is fixed, so that's not possible to change in the short run, but variables such as labor can change. So your production function in the very simple form is just a function of your labor and capital. Remember, your capital is fixed in the short run. Labor is variable insurance. Labor can change in the short standard time. So let's proceed the difference between short and long run. In the short run, you have some fixed variables. So in the long run, you have no fixed variables. So next is the marginal product. So marginal product is the additional production for each worker. So second is the law of diminishing marginal productivity. So that means the more worker the employer hires, the less production you get from each additional worker. Next is the cost in the short run. So we have here the variable cost, fixed cost, total cost, average total cost, and marginal cost. So when we say variable cost, so variable cost, this will change depends on how much you produce. Because the more something you produce, the more of labor you're going to pay for the raw materials. So second is the fixed cost. So fixed cost, it doesn't change. It doesn't matter how much you produce. So next is the total cost. So total cost, it is derived by summing up fixed and variable costs at each production level. Next is the average total cost. So that's your total cost divided by quantity. So last is the marginal cost. So marginal cost is the additional cost for producing each additional unit. Let's proceed to production in the long run. So, now in the long run, all the factors become variable. So, in the long run, everything becomes flexible. Because all factors are variable, the long run production function shows the most efficient way of producing any level of output. So next, let's proceed in the cost in the long run. So the long run is the period of time when all costs are variable. So we have here the production technologies. It's combining inputs to produce output. So second is economies of scale. So the situation where as the quantity of output goes up, the cost per unit goes down. So in the long run average cost curve, it shows the lowest possible average cost of production, allowing all the inputs to production to vary so that the firm is choosing its production technology. Second is the short run average cost curve. So the average total cost curve in the short term, it shows the total of average fixed cost and the average variable cost. So that's all for today. By the way, I am channeling Orivilio Liba. Thank you.